Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are brought to you as always by progressivechristianity.org, a wonderful place to get all of your progressive Christian resources. We hope you will follow them on social media and us on Facebook, and you'll subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Today we're talking about Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and we have to warn you, if you have not seen that yet, we're going to spoil it for you, both because we take great joy in spoiling things
Absolutely.
and because we really want to dig into it and talk
Oh
about
yeah.
all the theology and politics and have fun geeking out about it and all that good stuff. So I am joined as always by my good friend Mark Samlin. How you doing today, Mark?
I am doing great, man. I'm looking forward to this. I think this will be a very fun movie to be talking about.
Absolutely, I think it will. And it'll be even more fun if we're
Yes.
drinking some alcohol as we're talking
Absolutely.
about it. So, Mark, what have you
Absolutely.
got today?
Well, I went with a drink that's called a smoking gun, which there are reasons within the movie.
Mhm.
One of the main big things is a smoking gun that has a
Uh-huh.
role twice in the movie, and it
Yep.
is made of bourbon, scotch, sweet vermouth, a dash of blood orange bitters, and then it's trimmed with an orange that has cloves on it that are lit, hence the
Look
smoking
at that.
part of the smoking gun. So that's what I went with. What did you go with for your drink for today's show, man?
Well, Mark, that looks delicious, and I can almost smell it
No,
from
it does,
here.
it does
The
smell
smoking gun.
amazing. Those
Does it?
smoking cloves with the orange coming off, it really is kind of nice. It's also sort of seasonal, so it kind of works for the
Yeah.
Thanksgiving Christmas smell. I like, yeah, it's working well.
I
Where'd
love
you
that.
go
That
with
sounds really
this?
good. Okay, so I decided to do something around the theme of Coriolanus snow. So
Okay,
I've done
love
a
it.
take on a snow martini with white
Ah,
rum, blue curacao, and pineapple cream of coconut. But look at this. It has black and white sprinkles in it. They're in
all
equal
right.
amounts, but it has gone through the whole drink and turned the whole drink black, much like Snow's soul over the course
The
of
course
this
of the show.
movie.
I like
But
it.
you can't see this, but at the top, there are little white snowflakes from the sprinkles at the top of the glass
Nice.
as we see glimpses of Snow's purity maybe
It's
fading away. And it's in a
lovely.
champagne flute
Lovely.
in honor of the capital. So I feel like I should be drinking it out of a fancy serving
Absolutely.
bottle.
Something fancy for sure. Cheers, sir.
Cheers. See you after the break.
Mm.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Geek Out segment, in which we try to not geek out too much. That's actually not true at all. We geek out to our very core. We have as much fun as we can talking about the show. And we're going to try to keep it brief. We want to get on to the theopolitical perspectives that this movie holds, and it certainly holds a lot. But first, for those who may not be familiar, we're talking about The Hunger Games. It's the prequel, Ballad of the Songbird and Snakes. And so here's sort of the setup. Years before he becomes the authoritative president of Panem, 18-year-old Cornelius Coriolanus Snow is obsessed with restoring his family's lost wealth. And with a 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, he and other students are vying for this prestigious financial award upon graduation. But they end up learning that the award now would it being awarded would be based on their mentoring abilities with one of the participants of the Hunger Games. The Snow is assigned to mentor Lucy Gray from District 12. And both of them sort of begin capitalizing on their gifts for showmanship and political savvy. And they start struggling to come out on top of the games as they also struggle with navigating their own developing relationships. So, Caleb, I'm curious, how familiar were you with the Hunger Games in general, the movies, the books? Were you familiar with either or both of those?
So whenever the first Hunger Games movie came out, my now wife had read the books and she was super into it. And so we went to the movie. And so I saw probably the first two movies. I saw the last one that Philip Seymour Hoffman was in when he was alive. And so I saw those, but I just saw them in theaters maybe once since they had been in theaters, and I hadn't read any of the books. So I would say I had kind of a passing familiarity with Hunger Games to the point that I went in this, I like to go into the movies not knowing very much, knowing as little as I can. And so it had been long enough, Mark, since I had seen any Hunger Games movies that I was wondering, now exactly who was Coriolanus Snow? What was his role? Was he the mentor? Was he the Philip Seymour Hoffman character? And then I realized as we went on, like, no, that's not right. He was the president. And so one of the things that really kind of allowed me to do was to enter into it and go on the journey, not knowing where it was going to end, as more than casual fans would go in knowing exactly what was going to happen to Snow.
Okay. I was very familiar. I watched the first movie, immediately got hooked on the whole storyline, decided I was going to read the books, read the books, loved them, absolutely loved them. Watched all four of the prequel, or not prequel, all of the trilogy movies, the four. That's confusing, isn't it? It's 4 trilogy movies, but they broke up the last one into 2. And I absolutely loved them. I did not read the prequel book, so I was kind of coming into this story not fully aware of what was going on, but obviously the moment that they named Snow, I was like, oh, well, this is going to be interesting, knowing that he would become this sort of dictator of the entire land, president in name, but he wasn't really elected. He was he was put in a place of power. So we're going to keep our focus here on geeking out and not run too long. So I sort of want to jump towards the end of the movie in most of our discussion here, because that's kind of where things start coming together and it gets really, really different and interesting, and there's so much going on there. So I'm curious. One of the things that happens is as we watch Snow go from a somewhat sympathetic character trying to bring money and power back to his family, we start to see him going down a path that's a little more questionable, and you start seeing some of his tendencies coming out. And one of those tendencies, the reason I'm drinking a drink called a smoking gun, is he takes a gun and shoots one of the governor's daughter in the back. And then he asks someone to go get rid of that gun. And later we see him and Lucy Gray in a cabin, and opens up the floor, and he sees the gun that he had used. And they were running because they knew that gun could be used to point directly at him, which would be the end of everything for him. So I'm curious, when he first saw that gun, what do you think he was thinking?
I think he was thinking he was going to turn around and shoot Lucy Gray. I was surprised that it didn't happen immediately by that point, because I think he had so devolved so quickly that I think he had already made up his mind about what he was going to do if he ever found that gun. So that whenever I saw him look at that and put it up to his shoulder, I thought he was turning around to shoot her immediately. What do you think was going to happen? What do you think was going through his mind?
I guess I was still buying into him having not made the turn fully yet. at that moment, I still did. It changed pretty quickly for me. But at that very first moment when he saw the gun, I thought that he was probably thinking, okay, we don't have to run away. Because I think for me, part of the setup, what's going on is that he is the kind of personification of love of country. And she's sort of the personification of love of real freedom. And so it's interesting to see them in relationship. And he's finally running away to, quote, real freedom, away from love of country with her. And for me, at least for a moment, I thought he's thinking, okay, we don't have to run away. Whether or not she would buy into his need and willingness to not do that, that's different. But I think that she was definitely thinking what you were thinking. Right?
Oh, yeah. She was clearly nervous when she saw that gun in his hand.
And it's pouring rain outside, and she's like, I'm going to go get some Katniss, which we already had established wasn't in season quite yet. And it's pouring rain. And he says, you're not in season. It's raining out there. And she says, what was it? She said,
I'm not sugar, darling.
I'm not sugar, darling. Yeah. There was something about that moment, that exchange between them. For me, I was like, oh, everything has changed here.
It just changed. Yeah. There was a tonal shift.
Yeah. She goes outside, and you can kind of watch him almost wondering, is she really going to get more, or is she going? Because I think maybe she's leaving. And I think that was that moment. And the moment that I knew, yes, it has 100% changed, is when he went to look for her and he took the gun. Because he didn't need a gun to look for her.
No.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. He had determined what he was going to do to her at that moment.
Right.
Because they also had that exchange in the cabin about the loose ends. And he said, now all the loose ends will be tied up. And but one, me.
Right.
And
would have been,
And
absolutely.
I think if he hadn't decided, I kind of feel like he decided when he realized she could be a loose end.
That she could be a loose end. That's it. So does that mean when he goes out, he looks for her, he can't find her, but he does find his mother's scarf that he gave to her? I'm taking it, and tell me if I'm wrong, if this is true, that you believe she put the snake in the scarf that he found, and the snake bites him.
That's my take on it, especially since we saw her with that same snake earlier whenever they were out together, and she was kind of
that same kind of snake. Yeah. But she would have known it wasn't poisonous, right? Because she seemed to be familiar with it.
I don't think she.
Why do you think she did it? Yeah.
I don't think she wanted to kill him because she still has the good in her, as she, as they have this great discourse about. But I don't think she wanted to kill him. I don't think she ever wanted to kill anybody. But I think she wanted the distraction so she could get away. I think it was there kind of to draw his attention. And, and it works, right? He picks it up. He gets bit by the snake. He's down there kind of stunned, and she tries to run away. But he sees her and shoots at her.
Right. Well, you see, I think that it wasn't to get away. I think because of a line that she said when he first came to find her after he went back to District 12, he steps on a branch, and she kind of startles, and she says, do you remember what she says? She says, I'm sorry. I still feel like I have 1 foot in the game. Or something very similar. That 1 foot is still one. Yeah. I feel like and I feel like that's exactly what was going on here, but on a different level. That she still had 1 foot in the game, and that she was trying to determine if she could trust him, because she had also said, trust when it comes to love is the most important thing to me. And I think she knew it wasn't poisonous. She put it in the scarf and wanted to see how he reacted. So she would know whether that full trust had been lost or not. Does he get angry and come after me? Does he cry, or does he say, hey, what are you doing? I feel like
Yeah.
that was her test. I think that was the end of everything right there. That it was like the big test.
So if he had put the guns in the water and he had just gone out and looked for her and had been there, like, what are you doing? You feel like maybe they could have still had a relationship and they could have run away together. And
I think she would
happily
have been
ever after.
willing to at least continue investigating. And I think this was the moment everything started happening. I think she got worried. She went out. She said, here's my little test. I've got one foot in the game. We're still playing the game. I'm going to find out, is he trustworthy? Is he trust our relationship? Does he trust me? And his reaction to that would have told her. That's kind of where I see. I don't know.
That's a good take. That's a good take. I like that.
What do you think? Do you think she's still alive?
I do think she's still alive. I think if for no other reason, and granted, I haven't read the books. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like she is someone who both humanized Snow and helped make us care about Snow, helped make him a sympathetic character. And then when he turned on her, helped us to feel kind of the great emotional weight of that. So if for no other reason, I think having her in a sequel helps us to really get the impact of how much Snow has turned. And it maybe serves to humanize him a little bit more. What do you think? Do you think she's still alive, or do you think he got her?
I think she's still alive. And I think we see things play out in the rest of the trilogy that this is the prequel to, that tip the hat that she's still around. Like the way that Katniss sings The Hanging Tree. And that's a song that Lucy Gray wrote. I think there's a little tip of the hat that suggests that she's still around. Maybe she's still hiding, but parts of who she is affect everything that's going on. I got one more question I want to slip in before we wrap this segment up. There were a lot of deaths in this movie. A lot of people died. What death hit you the hardest?
You know, I think whenever Lucy Gray's fellow District 12 guy was there, he had gotten rabies and he was coming after her. I think that in some ways that was, unavoidable. He had gotten the sickness, but it also, I think, spoke to what happened in the games, that this person who she had been close to was turning on her. And it wasn't just because of the Hunger Games, but I think it was that space that facilitated it. And to see that her have to wrestle with that was emotionally charged, I think. So that one hit me hard. How about for you? What one was the hardest for you?
The one that really hit me was High Bottom, Peter Dinklage's character. In that, like, he helped create these Hunger Games, but it was Snow's dad who kind of stole the idea and made it go. And Dinklage kind of clearly, High Bottom regretted the whole thing. Became this half of a shell of who he was because he was taking the what do they call it? It wasn't morphine, but it was a word like morphine that he drinks.
It was like morphine or something.
Morphine or something. Yeah, but it was the alcohol of the day, but in little tiny vials. And that he clearly regretted it. His life was wrecked over it. And that that Snow knew that he would take that morphine he knew he did it. He poisoned it just like he did. For me, that one hit hard. I was like, man, that's the one character that I really wanted to see redeemed. I really desperately wanted him to have even the tiniest taste of some kind of redemption in this, and instead Snow kills him. It's like, wow, that's some serious storytelling. Anyway, we could keep geeking out about all of this, and I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to, but we really do. Let's get on to talking about some of the more serious stuff, some of the theo-political topics and subjects that this movie really strongly pointed to. So let's have a quick break and come back on the other side with our theo-political segment.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where we are talking about the new Hunger Games movie, and we're moving into our Theopolitico segment. So, Mark, one of the things I want to talk about is something I think that is pretty important to faith, but not something I think we've talked about much on the Moonshine Jesus Show, but it's something that I think was very present in this movie, and that's the power of song. So, Lucy Gray, it comes from Romana type people who have been gathered up just as the Romana people were, especially in the Second World War, and are oppressed. And in some ways, they tell their narrative through song, and those narratives are kind of taken away. And so the power of singing is a way of reclaiming identity and stuff. Tell me, Mark, a little bit about what role do you think music and song play both in theology and maybe even in politics?
Yeah, I mean, I can't understate or I can't overstate how much I think song communicates to us in a way that actual just words itself can't communicate to us. Everything from the Psalms themselves, which were, songs written for lyric frequently, to the songs that we sing in church, they touch us and move us in a deeper way than words are ever going to be able to do that. It also, in a lot of ways, can be, so there's that emotional part where it can move us in all of these emotional ways. But also there's this kind of beauty to a song. Song seems so innocent, and you can plant powerful ideas within lyrics that can move us and touch us, where if you just said them out loud, they would seem more dangerous, but they also wouldn't move you quite as deeply. And so we see throughout all kinds of, for spiritually, you can put difficult theological ideas in that, although we don't do that nearly enough, and use it to move us in powerful ways. But I think in politics, it may be even more powerful, where we see movements who are like, let's just talk about the sit-in movement in general, a civil rights movement. The songs played such an important and essential role in communicating what was going on and getting people engaged and excited, and having this deep understanding that this is possible. We can make this happen. And it creates community as you sing those songs together. It knits people together in a way that a speech alone could never do. So I think music is one of the most powerful things that we have, both to do positive healing and emotional in-depth work, but also to motivate us and make us connect with what really matters in life. I would ramble on and on about music if you let me, but we probably shouldn't do that. But I just think it's incredible, and I can't overstate how important it is to me.
I think that's a great point, because so Lucy Gray in the show, she uses music as a tool to motivate, to galvanize, everyone kind of in favor of her. She uses it as an emotional tool, and they recognize very quickly the power that it has. And certainly, I think of, like, say, protest music, "We Shall Not Be Moved, We Shall Overcome," things that are not tied necessarily to a particular faith tradition, but unite people across all kinds of economic groups, faith groups, all to create kind of an atmosphere. Which makes me wonder, Mark, since it does have such an emotive kind of power, and it can have theological significance, one of the struggles often in churches is the fact that, even say in more progressive spaces, we want to have more progressive theology, but we also often have music that conveys a different kind of theology than what the church might profess. What do you make of that, Mark? Is that good? Is it dangerous? Is it what should we do about that?
Well, I don't think it's good at all. Matter of fact, at our church, we don't sing those old hymns just because of the theology. Sometimes we do, but if we do, it's because we've gone in and we've rewritten parts of the verses to match up with better theology. So I think one of the things we have to do is focus on creating more music that actually promotes positive theology that comes closer to the teachings of Jesus, and not so You get a lot of theology light in hymns. You also get a lot of bad theology, Onward Christian Soldiers, the Blood.
Mhm.
There's so much theology that really we've moved beyond theologically in terms of scholastics, but we still keep them in our songs. It just in part points to how powerful those songs are, that we're willing to overlook the bad theology just so we can be emotionally keyed in and moved by the songs. But I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think that that's got to change. My homiletics professor used to say that until there is music, the spirit doesn't arrive. As a matter of fact, we would have to sing a spiritual before every class, before we even started talking about how do you use words. We use music first. And I think that points to how important the words in the music really is, and that we should stop overlooking it and dismissing it because we love the old hymns so much, and figure out new ways to utilize those old hymns, rewrite them, use the music, and move forward with better equipped songs theologically. What are your thoughts on those old songs?
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think this is something that a lot of churches spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about, is how it is that we make the music to which we are emotionally tied, because a lot of times people, at least people in the pews, are emotionally tied to certain songs. How it is that we utilize that emotional tie, or meet that emotional need, while also having music that reflects our values. And I think it's kind of a struggle. I think there are great, modern pieces that you can put in. And I think taking songs, as you've mentioned, and rewriting pieces of them so that they fit a more inclusive theology, a more authentic faith, progressive theology is important, because, I think if you claim to be a more progressive church, that has to come across everywhere in your service. And it's also something that can be really hard to do. So I would love to talk more about music, because I think it is such an important part of this, and also an important part of our faith. But I also want to talk about some of the other theopolitical things in this movie, because there are such a lot of them. And so one of the things that is said in the movie is that people aren't so bad, and Lucy Gray is saying this, it's what the world does to us. It's either Lucy Gray or Tigress who says this. People aren't so bad, it's what the world does to us. But it's our life's work. It's our life's work to stay on the right side of that line. What do you think about that theology, Mark? Is it that people aren't so bad, but the world makes people bad, or are there some people who inherently kind of have evil within them? Why is there evil in the world, Mark? What's your theodicy?
Yeah. Well, I'm not real big on making blanket statements about humanity is good, humanity is bad. We are a mixed bag of everything. When you look at all our other aspects and ratios, and that we're so many different things. So I think we need to be wise enough to apply that to being good and being bad. What I will say, though, I don't call people evil. I'm not willing to do that. But I am certainly willing to call systems evil. So I don't think it's the world. I think if the world had been left alone by human greed, which is part of what this, what the Hunger Games is about, is to point to the dangers of human greed and to the dangers of how greed and lack of trust can destroy love. If the world were left to its own, I don't think we would have these issues. It's our need to pursue greed and power where we create systems that are evil. And those systems, and I think it's a big message of the Hunger Games, does push people to be something other than what they might have otherwise been. It does encourage them to believe that they are more important, more powerful, more deserving than other folks. It's certainly one of the things Snow felt his entire life, clearly, at least from an early teen to what we see him at age 18, is that he feels like he's more deserving in some way, and that he deserves to be elevated and created better. And I think it's the systems that do that. We see that as a young child, he was just trying to survive. He was in a horrible world where his life was falling apart and his family was falling apart. But the system that he existed in created situations and achievements. If you do this, you
Mm-hmm.
can pull yourself out. And the things that it was requiring of him really created him as an evil, like to do evil things, not an evil person, but where it was necessary to do evil things. I don't know. Am I overreading? Am I reading too much into it?
No, I think you're right. I think that a lot of times the systems in our world, the experiences that we have form us. In some ways, we are a product of our experiences and a product of what our situations are like, right? And some people grow up in situations or live in situations where their choices are limited, or that they have bad examples of how people ought to behave, and they copy that. I mean, psychologically, we know that we imitate the things that are taught to us. And so I think that in a lot of ways it is the environments around us that create whether we are interacting with the world in a positive way or whether we are interacting with it in a harmful way. And so I agree that it's not quite so simple to say people are always good or always bad, or even that people who do horrible things are all bad. But certainly that there are experiences in our lives that make us behave better or worse. So one of the other things that we see really made manifest in this movie, and I just want to slip this last question in here, Mark, is poverty. I mean, we see poverty both in the midst of the war, and then we see it in the districts and even in the capital, right? The Snow family is living in poverty. And I'm thinking about when the tributes are in the zoo and the mentors bring food, and one of the mentors is kind of playing with the food. She's got this bottle that she's going to kind of torment the tribute with. And Lucy Gray turns to Coriolanus and says, "Hunger is a weapon." And so, Mark, I'm curious both what you make of that, if hunger is a weapon, and if we see any examples of hunger being weaponized anywhere in our world today.
Hunger is definitely a weapon, in that poverty is a weapon. And the reality is, we know that there is more than enough food for everyone. It isn't it isn't a question of do we have enough. It is a question of, are we willing to share? Are we willing to make any kind of sacrifice to create systems that distribute? So, anytime that there's poverty, you have to recognize that there is some weaponization that's happening there, whether it's intentional or not. A lot of times it's just pure uncaring ignorance of I've got mine and everybody else, whatever they need to do. But I think in America in particular, poverty and hunger is weaponized. It is designed, our systems are definitely designed to keep people in the places that they're in, and not just keep them in the places that they're in, but to struggle in those spaces, to have to put too much time into, can I just get through this day, so that you're not able to resist those with power who are creating these systems that are stepping on everyone. And as part of what we see in this Hunger Game, it also creates a false sense of a lack of resources where you end up competing with each other, which is what they're forced into in the Hunger Games. And so, it is both a weapon and it is a way to control people for sure, and to distract them, to maintain power.
Those are great points, Mark. I mean, I think too about the Israel-Palestine conflict and the ways we 100%. See food lines being, food supplies being bombed and destroyed, so that innocent civilians starve as a tool for war. I think that's a great evil in our world. I think about environmental racism and the ways that we deny particularly communities of color access to good, nutritious food, and where it's
look at food deserts. Look at food deserts and overlap it with maps of where different race populations tend to live, and it is eye-opening.
Absolutely clear that it's communities of color that don't have access to good, healthy, nutritious food, and it's done intentionally. I also think, to piggyback on your point, when I spent some time in seminary working for Bread for the World, and one of the things that we would say is that, yes, there is plenty of food in the world, we just have to share it. And that's not a partisan issue. That is a moral issue. And anyone who tries to make that into a partisan issue is just someone who is, I think, behaving in a very unethical manner. And if
Agreed.
Christians buy into that, that's deeply problematic. Hey, I've got a lot of other theopolitical things I want to talk about, but we're over time and we've got to get to our Make Me Look Stupid segment, because if we don't have a chance to try to make each other look stupid, well, it just wouldn't be the Moonshine Jesus show. So
Right.
let's have a quick break, grab another drink, and come back for Make Me Look Stupid.
Hello, welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You are joining us for our Make Me Look Stupid segment where, sometimes we try to make each other look stupid, and sometimes we just ask a general point of curiosity so that the other person can show us how stupid we are for not knowing the answer to that question. And before we dig into this, I do want to point out, this is all about a very ridiculous scenario that we've got a movie here that's ultimately in a series of movies, ultimately about some like fraudulent rich guy who needs reality television to become rich, famous, and the president, and that would never happen in the real world. So
thank God nothing like that would ever happen.
Just know that we recognize how ridiculous the whole situation and setup is for this. I have a simple question, and it isn't to make you look stupid. It's a real point of curiosity. We both have come to an agreement that we do believe that Lucy Gray survived and went on.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that Lucy Gray, because we see a lot of relations in this. We see the announcer is some relative of his remains the announcer many years down the road. We see Snow. We see all of these different folks who have relatives. Is there any chance that Lucy Gray ends up being related to Katniss? I mean, she talks about this particular route, and she's like, "Oh, I like to call it Katniss. Isn't that a better name?" I mean, do you think there's any chance?
That was exactly what I thought as she said that. As she said, they call these swamp potatoes, but I like to call them Katniss.
Right.
Hint,
Right.
hint, wink, wink. There's gonna be a descendant down the line that's gonna play an important role here. That's exactly what I thought. But who do you think? Do you think Snow is involved in any way? Do you think she's also a descendant of Snow, or
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Matter of fact, someone else. Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, I don't. Yeah, and I'm not even 100% sure that Lucy Gray is going to be directly associated with Katniss. Like, there were a lot of things that happened that was clearly trying to connect the two. There's even this sarcastic bow that that Lucy Gray takes. That's exactly like the one that Katniss takes. So I think they're intentionally trying to show that there's something going on here. I think ultimately that Lucy Gray is the inspiration in part for Katniss. Is why she knows the song. I think that someone who is a descendant of Lucy Gray held on to some of the stuff about Lucy Gray and exposed Katniss to it. But I don't know that they're actually like directly related, but I think they're related in spirit, if that makes sense. That would be my take on it.
I like that. Yeah, I'll be interested to see in future movies if they make them. I don't think they've announced.
Well, there's no book yet. There's no follow-up book, so I think that they would wait for there to be another prequel book or some book about it, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But we're going to have to wait.
Oh, I wouldn't either, because it's already made money, so I'm sure they'll put that on the fast track there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so my question for you, Mark, is. We see Snow go through a variety of changes over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm curious, was Snow really like devolving because of the experiences that he had
Yeah.
throughout the movie, or was like the kindness, the genuineness, was that all just an act all along, just to climb the social ladder? So my point is this: is he actually a product of what happens in the movie, or was he really the same guy all along and was just kind of playing a part?
I think he was playing a part, frankly, because in part I felt like the turn in his character was almost too abrupt. Like if I bought that he was this kind, gentle person, then how quickly he became a harsh killer and was perfectly fine with it. To me, that doesn't make any sense in terms of in general how humans operate. So I think that he was in a system that created and probably saw what he little he knew of his father was enough to know that he was a brutal military leader and that he wanted to be a bit of that. He was in a difficult situation where he knew he had to do whatever it took to survive. I definitely think I do think that Lucy Gray and her kindness towards him was beginning to influence him a little bit. But by the end of it, we see him basically say being in love and having a loving relationship is a weakness, and that defines the rest of his life. But I think he was already predisposed to kind of be that person. That's what I think anyway. What you think anything similar, or did you think that it was a genuine turn and that he really was trying to be kind?
So, as I said, I went into the movie not remembering much about the kind of mythology and the world building that had happened here. And so, as I was watching at the beginning, I bought into it, but noticed, as soon as he went to the school, that he put on a different facade, and so that was kind of startling at first. And
you sort of know there's a fakeness to him of some sort.
Yes, absolutely. But but I bought into at first that okay, that's what he needs to do to take care of his family and stuff. But as the movie went on, and I saw more of his character, I thought, oh no, it was all an act to everybody, including to his family. He doesn't care about anybody except Coriolanus Snow, and he is always just doing what is the best for him. And I think that's what was happening all along. And so I thought that was actually powerful to see that and to see those roles that he was playing. One thing that I think may have helped with all of that is if, say, part 3 of this movie had been the start of a new movie. Like if parts 1 and 2 had been this movie, and if it had ended with him on the train to District 12, and we ended this movie there and started the next movie with him on that train, I think that would have helped his character arc a little.
I think that was necessary. I think they should have done that. I think that there was a whole lot more that needed to be extrapolated in both his character and Lucy Gray's character in the third part of this, that it could have easily justified a full movie on its own and would have made us more interested in their characters and more interested in their development. And I think we could have learned a lot more about Lucy Gray and what was really going on with her. That was one of my big disappointments, is I think that they unfortunately left too much of her as a mystery. And I get why they did part of it. But as a character, I felt like it was time for her to be revealed a little bit more, and we weren't able to get any of that. That was a little bit of a disappointment. So listen, we could go on and on, but we really are moving well beyond the length that we usually go on these shows. But that's okay. It's just such a fascinating and interesting story to kind of pick apart and talk about. But we do need to decide what we're going to talk about next week. So I was curious. I might have an idea or two, but have you thought of anything that you think we should be looking at?
Okay, Mark. So I have just finished watching season 2 of Loki, and I know we're both big Marvel fans, and Loki is a really fun show. What do you think? Season 2 of Loki? You want to do that?
Absolutely. It's probably one of my favorite seasons of any Marvel show.
It's great.
So I would love for us to talk a little bit about it. All right, so that is the plan. Next week, folks, we will be doing Loki season 2. It finished a couple of weeks ago, so you've got no excuse to not be caught up and to be with us, ready on the live show to listen to our thoughts and take on it. But also, just thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm never going to not thank you for allowing us to do this show, and it's all of you listeners that make this something we get to do, and we are just so grateful for the opportunity. I know Caleb is as well. So until next time, thanks for watching the Moonshine Jesus Show.